Chair recognizes Representative LaGrand.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I take no pleasure in rising in opposition to this resolution. Those who know me know that I treasure unity. I treasure opportunities for bipartisan work, and I value transparency and full analysis of issues of public policy. I hope that it will never be said of me that I ever chose party over principle. I am, as my central commitment, a Christian, a poor, halting one, but I am only contingently a Democrat because of my conclusion that the values of my party align imperfectly but significantly with my Christian commitment. I am an American, and I hope a patriot, a poor, halting one, but I believe that what our nation at its best aspires to, imperfectly but significantly aligns with my Christian commitments. I tremble for our nation in this moment of hyper-partisan rancor, chronically tinged with suggestions of violence, of impugning the motives of others. I yearn to find higher ground, but also common ground. I understand and I acknowledge that there are significant arguments in favor of voting yes on this resolution. The best arguments, as I can discern, are these: that much as maybe our recently departed colleagues here who have moved to that other body might disagree, I do not view this body as a junior partner to the Senate, and the Senate Oversight Committee already has subpoena power. I also take seriously the argument that we should always yearn for the truth to come out, and that if subpoenas help that goal, that is a legitimate argument. But as we move closer to reshaping this committee in something that looks more like a courtroom, I have concerns. And centrally, my concerns align around the fact that we don't seem to do it very well. I was in that committee in an hours-long hearing in which an attorney waved a binder around and claimed he had evidence. In a courtroom, that wouldn't fly as a submission of evidence. I was in a committee hearing where an attorney asked leading questions of a witness for an hour and a half, while members of my committee were only allowed one question each for a witness at the end of an hour and a half's testimony. I was in a committee where there was no provision of a witness list. Now, my instincts as a lawyer are, I want to be able to object to leading questions. I want to be able to interact with witnesses. I want to be able to legitimately get at the truth. That was not the dynamic of that hearing, unfortunately. As I said in that hearing, I want to say, and I think it's important that I say this to all of you, it's important that we conceptually separate evidence from things that different than evidence. In other words, if we want to have an inquiry into an issue, we have to have a threshold for that inquiry. Allegations, we have to have an evidentiary threshold, and that's exactly what courtrooms do. Allegations are not evidence. As I said in that committee, I could allege that Amelia Earhart is buried under Tiger Stadium. That doesn't mean that someone has to dig it up to see if I'm right or not. Even worse, questions are not evidence. If I was in a third grade classroom and suddenly asked the teacher how tall she was, that would be a question. It wouldn't be germane to the topic at hand, but it would be a question. Not all inquiries are legitimate. That's why courts ask for thresholds of evidence before we engage in inquiry. So my concern here is based on past performance. Would subpoena power really give us a legitimate inquiry? And would that inquiry really be bipartisan? And my concern, and this I say as a patriot, is precedent for abuse in situations like this. And I've raised this before. We all, I hope, have a historic memory, if not a living memory, of the horrors of the McCarthy era. Inquiries that don't have boundaries, that don't have a clear agenda, that don't have a clear stopping point, can be an occasion for massive government overreach into the category of terror. One of the stains of this country, and I said I'm a patriot, at its best, there is nothing like the United States of America. But we have moments of shame. One of those moments was the Salem witch trials. One of those moments was the McCarthy-era hearings. We have to be careful when we give the government the power to start calling people into court. And as I said in the committee, and I'll say it again now, cooperation beats coercion if we want to have a viable democracy. My understanding is that the intent of this resolution is to empower subpoenas of the Detroit clerk, who has already agreed to cooperate completely, and the Livonia clerk, who has received no communication to which to respond to this date, as I understand. In other words, there has been no opportunity for cooperation and collaboration between branches of government. And if we want to keep our democracy viable, we have to respect each other, and the respect starts with requests for cooperation and collaboration. It should not start with coercion. So my final concern here is that the subject matter inquiry has been the basis of court inquiry, and courts have found nothing. Our federal attorney general has found nothing. Mr. Giuliani came into court and made two of the most bizarre allegations I've ever heard in my life. One was that 700,000 fraudulent votes were cast in Detroit. That's a math problem that I hope all of you spot. His second allegation, which I find even more bizarre, and I don't know what to do about conspiracy theories except to name them, is that somehow 175 million Democrats are all involved in a conspiracy, none of which we've ever talked about. So no senile Democrat has ever leaked to this conspiracy. No juvenile Democrat has ever leaked this conspiracy. Only people on the outside occasionally can see this conspiracy. Now, that means Scientologists have got nothing on Democrats. One of my favorite theologians is a man named Chuck Colson, who said that one of his central proofs of the validity of Christ's resurrection was that 12 people could never keep a secret. It's too big a group. Mr. Giuliani posited a conspiracy of 175 million people in our committee the other day and got a hearing for such an absurd statement. So before I could possibly support this resolution, and I understand the validity of the arguments in favor of it, I would like scope, I would like to know what the goal of our inquiry is, and I would like significant assurance that we are not coercing people who, in fact, would be cooperative. Thank you very much for your consideration, Madam Speaker.